Welcome into the NBA Morning Deuce. Sunday night, January 10th. We're recording a little bit earlier tonight, Alex. First of all, if every NBA Sunday was like this would be amazing for us, for the type of podcast we do. Last game of the night is starting right now at 8:30, the Warriors game. But also, the show's going to be a little bit different today. Normally on Sundays, what we've been doing, which I like, is we've been doing our overreactions from the week before. We still have been doing Sunday nights where we go through the games of that day a little bit, but we also do our overreactions. We might discuss tonight's games. We might discuss the games today, but it kind of seems silly. The games today seem pointless, which they aren't. There was one really great game. The Clippers-Bulls game was great. Zach LaVine had one of the best games of anybody this year. The Clippers barely beat the Bulls 131-27. The rest of the games, like many games this year, have all kind of sucked. And it does kind of seem like it would kind of seem pointless to like fine-tooth comb go through the games today when there's an overarching story with the NBA involving the COVID situation and particularly from today, the Heat Celtics game, right? So one of my overreactions when I was writing down my notes earlier today was that the NBA is headed towards a path of a COVID shutdown. And I wrote that before the Heat game got postponed. Like, I was overreacting to the Michael Porter Jr. news from last week, and then Jason Tatum being in quarantine. And then there was a report before the Heat game got postponed that Avery Bradley had to quarantine, and all these guys having to quarantine, and then the Sixers game on Saturday night, right? All these things before the Heat game got postponed today. I was thinking, oh, they're in trouble. Then the Heat game gets postponed, right? And the reason being that the Heat didn't have enough active players, which is absurd considering the Celtics were going to have 8 players, right? So the Celtics had 9 inactive players for this game, some due to injury, some due to the COVID protocols, whatever it was. And then the Heat, a day after playing the Wizards, which is something we probably need to discuss too, the Heat also now don't have enough active players. So the game gets postponed. Even more crazy when you consider the fact that your Sixers had to activate Mike Scott and have him dress out when he could not play basketball just to have enough players to play in a game because they didn't have enough players because of COVID or because of the COVID protocols. So it seemed like doing a normal show today, talking about the games, it almost didn't make a ton of sense because it's like, are we headed towards a path? Or are we headed down a path? Is the league headed down a path where there's going to be, not shut down the league? I don't think there's like a big cancel, but like a pause? Are they going to have to pause the season is the question at this point. Because it's happening how many times can they go multiple nights in a row where teams are playing with 7 or 8 guys? It's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the coaches, but in particular, like, even like, Tyrese Maxey, yeah, he's a kid, but like how many times can you throw that kid out there to play 48 minutes? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. The thing that's...
By the way, before you go on, Corey James, it does suck. You're right.
That's a really good way. I mean, that's probably better said than what I'm about to say, but I just am not sure a pause makes... Like, this vaccine is still down the road for people like you and me and probably for NBA... Young, healthy people, the vaccine it's going to be a while, right? So I'm just kind of trying to wrap my mind around what a pause would achieve,
Well, a pause to maybe reevaluate their strategy because they did rush this season
Definitely.
To get it.
Yeah.
They rushed the season to be able to do 72 games so that the next season wouldn't be pushed back and it wouldn't lose a ton of money. And I understand where the league's coming from, right? You have to balance, like, how much money can we lose to where the business is falling apart to where balance that with what's best for the players and the teams. And obviously, it seems as though the strategy that they put together, which was the testing and contact tracing and all that stuff, is not working out. at least seeming like I know every league has had their problems, right? The NFL had the stuff with the Ravens; they had to postpone their games, and the Titans had the outbreaks and stuff like that. And then you mentioned how MLB. I don't really know all much about what happened with MLB, but this strikes me as a little bit more like a wildfire than those other situations.
I would completely agree. Yeah, and I would say that this, until people are vaccinated, it doesn't seem like this version works. You know, with okay, we're going to test a shitload, but we're still going to have guys traveling to different cities and playing back to backs. Look, we know a bubble works, right? And apparently that's off the table. It seems like a bubble is totally off the table, but that's the only way I see this working. Really, I just don't know, because you can't space these games out far enough. Unless they drastically cut the season. They say, okay, look, we're playing 50 games, and then you put at least two days between each game so that you have time to test.
But
And,
also, but the thing. Okay, but I guess part of the issue becomes, even if you have 2 days between every single game, if someone tests positive, then they're out for 10 to 14 days, and everyone who's been in contact with them is out for at least a few days. So you're still going to have situations like this where teams only have 7 or 8 active players.
Yeah, I just feel like it would allow for like the prevention of other teams catching it from certain you know what I mean? Like it just gives more time. It's the reason the NFL worked out. I mean, it's a full week that's different from a couple days, but I just feel like the more time in between you can identify who cannot play and who can't would make this run smoother. But I don't know. I don't
know that they'd make it through the way things are going right now. Look, we're done. We just finished week 3. We haven't even made it 10 games into the season, right? Most teams have not played 10 games, or they've played just about 10 games. Which means if they knocked it down to 50 games, how are they going to get through 40 more games the way things are going?
Well, yeah,
and you can't. By the way, and you can't change that without pausing the season. You can't say we're changing the schedule. So no matter what happens, it seems like they're going to have to power through with a bunch of terrible games and putting players in a really bad situation and teams, or something, or they're going to have to at least take a week and say, hey, we're just pushing the schedule forward a week as we reevaluate what we decided to do here.
Right, but what could they arrive at besides the bubble? I guess I mean,
don't know.
There's a lot smarter people out there working on this sort of thing than me, but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sucks,
and just to be clear, like, there's probably people who maybe think this is an actual overreaction, but let's just go through this season in general, all right, through 3 weeks. Opening night, a game was postponed because of the COVID situation, right? Thunder Rockets was postponed. You had 5 guys, whatever, it was Boogie, John Wall, Eric Gordon, and some other guys, all had to quarantine because they were getting their hair cut or something. Sunday night, tonight, that we're recording this, Heat, the second game already of this season has been postponed. Neither team basically had a team. The Heat had like 6 players that could play. The Celtics had 8 players that could play, but neither of them, like, both teams were missing the majority of their rosters. Saturday night, as we already mentioned, the Sixers only had 8 active players, but one of them couldn't even play. He just dressed so that they could play. Michael Porter Jr. already quarantined for 7 days and now has to quarantine for another 10 to 14 days. Kevin Durant already had to miss a week because of this. And now the Mavericks, Maxi Kleber tested positive, and they had to shut down their facility today. In Tampa, they were allowing fans at Raptors and Lightning games. Not anymore, because they're surging in Tampa, so now fans aren't allowed in games. Like, this thing it's widespread, and it just doesn't seem like continuing games the way they're continuing, it doesn't seem like that it's sustainable to get through.
I agree.
It is sustainable. Like, they could do it, but it's going to be a lot of bad basketball, and it's not going to help your standing with fans. Like, fans can't, as a fan of the NBA, you can't be happy with for games getting postponed is one thing, but like watching that Sixers game yesterday. Now, Tyrese Maxey was fun, but like you can't be happy with that. Like that, they can't have multiple times like that where you're like, this is the product we're putting on the floor.
Right, and I think what we haven't even started to see yet is backlash from teams and players and coaches about like fairness in terms of what's getting postponed and what's not. Like,
Well,
why
sure.
was the Rockets game on opening night postponed? Essentially because James Harden got suspended for being an asshole, right? So then the Sixers technically have enough guys because Mike Scott, who couldn't play, like, as this starts to unfold and the NBA's got to make decisions on a case by case basis, like they're
Happened in
going to
the
get some
NFL
things,
too.
they're
Happened in
going
the
to get
NFL.
things wrong, right? And then it leaves you to wonder, like, why are we doing this if we don't have faith that things are even fair here in terms of who's playing and who's getting postponed and things like that? It
it
doesn't make
happened in
any
the
sense.
NFL, right? Like Lamar Jackson couldn't play, so the Ravens game got postponed. But then the Broncos had to play with a wide receiver as their quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's like nobody's figured it out yet.
Right. And I do get that it's, we're in the middle of a pandemic, like it's extenuating circumstances. So maybe, the word down from the commissioner is, look, some people are going to get screwed, deal with it. But I just don't know in a 62 or 72 game season if that's going to work at all. People are going to start getting pissed and confused about what the actual deal is. I know I already am with the contact tracing. I flat out don't understand what requires things to be contact traced and what doesn't.
Right.
I don't know, man. Adam Silver's job is very difficult right now.
Yeah, and according to Woj, the NBA has already said they have no plan on pausing the season due to thinning rosters, but they don't. There's no plan until there's a plan, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, there's
if it keeps happening every night now, there's two things. There might be an easy solution here. Maybe the NBA needs to take a look at whatever the fuck is going on in Washington, because it's been a week straight where every team that plays Washington has multiple people having to sit out after they play Washington. It's not even, it's absurd. And I don't understand how the league has not, how there isn't more talked about this. KD had to sit for a week after he played Washington. Your Sixers, all those guys had to sit. Seth Curry got COVID after they played Washington, and now all those guys had to sit, right? Jason Tatum, there's video of him after the game basically hugging Brad Beale and talking like mouth to mouth. And then Jason Tatum is out 10 to 14 days. And now the Heat just played Washington 2 nights ago. Their game is postponed. Something is happening with the Wizards, and the league is not addressing it. How are the Wizards still playing games when every team? That's where the league is really gonna mess themselves up here. They have to at least address this. Like, how is it possible that all these teams have guys sitting out and games are getting postponed immediately after they play the Wizards, but the Wizards are still playing basketball? It makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but probably the sense the NBA will try to look at is that nobody on the Wizards is testing positive, right? I mean,
I don't know.
yeah.
I guess, but something's got to be going on.
I mean,
It's too much of a coincidence that all these teams have guys having to either sit or cancel games the day after. Like that outlet down here that I always mention, 5 Reasons, that covers the Heat extensively. That day before the Wizards game, their main account tweeted, "I would anticipate players from the Heat having to sit after this game," and it happened.
yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that it is a coincidence, So I don't know. I mean, it's crazy. It'd be an insane coincidence, but it could be.
Yes, it could be a coincidence, but
Yeah.
come on, man. Like, it's
No, I know.
But at least, look, I would say, even if it is a coincidence, isn't it like incumbent upon the league to be like, we're looking into what's going on and why all these teams have positive cases right after they play the Wizards?
Yeah, they should
like,
say that.
Maybe there's an easy solution to this. Maybe there's false positives. Maybe someone within their organization, like, who knows what's going on? But it just seems too. And I'm not like a conspiracy theory guy, but it does seem too much.
I think the word you're looking for, our boy Corey James just commented.
Yeah,
You
sketchy.
wanna pop that up there.
It's super
Corey
sketchy.
James.
Yeah,
He's
for
very
sure.
sketchy.
I don't understand how more is not being made. I mean, it is being made. Like, people on social media are addressing it, and some writers and people have mentioned it. But the league, here's the thing: the answer right now from the league can't just be there's no plan to pause. Like, I think this week they have to come out and say, here's what our plan is going. I don't think they can just they could do whatever they want, I guess. But it seems unlike the NBA. who generally speaking are at the forefront of everything, right? And they generally make the right decisions. It would be pretty wild to me that if Adam Silver doesn't at least release a statement or something saying, here's what our plan is moving forward. Mm-hmm. Because right now, I would say most fans are probably looking around saying, this thing is falling apart at the seams and it's not going to make it to the end of the year.
I'm with you. Refresh me again, how many games are scheduled right now? Because maybe that's what it's like, we'll reevaluate when we get to this point.
Only up until, I don't know how many games it is, but it's only up until All-Star break, which is not even happening. Like, they're not having an All-Star game.
Right. So maybe that's what they're saying, is we already have this built-in pause coming, but that's not soon enough. So I'm with you. I don't know.
There's only, so the only reason the NBA hypothetically can get away with this is the lack of parity in the NBA. And it just has how it's always been, right? So, like, I really only can compare it to the NFL. It's hard for me to compare to any other sport because I don't follow other sports enough, like baseball or anything. But, like, in the NFL, no matter what, really any team's got a shot. Like, if you make the playoffs, you got a chance because of the one-and-done nature and all that stuff. No matter what happens in the regular season this year, we kind of have this idea that there's like 6 or 7 teams that have a legit chance to win a championship. So if if you're the NBA, as long as something wild doesn't happen where the Lakers don't have LeBron and AD for 2 months and then they miss you know what I'm saying? Like, as long as all the teams that you anticipate being your teams make the playoffs, I guess it really doesn't matter a ton. There's no fans. So you're not losing fan money. It's not like you're pissing off the fans who paid their money to go watch these games. You're going to probably lose ratings, but the ratings I don't think are great this year anyways. Maybe they just look at it as like, we can't lose any more money than we already have. We have to press forward.
I think that is exactly what they're doing. It seems like it, or else they would have paused the season already. I think they're just going to plug away. The product is probably going to suffer, but it's the lesser of two evils. We'll shove a shitty product out there and make our money, as opposed to disappointing these advertisers and pausing or shutting down the season. So they're in a corner. They're definitely in a corner, and I really think it's the only way that this would come to a halt is if enough players, like the Players Association, was like, look, we don't feel safe. We're done here.
I was gonna say, like, it's surprising, and maybe maybe this game getting postponed was what needed to happen. But I'm surprised the Players Association has been pretty quiet up to this point.
Right. Well, they've got money on it too, right? Riding on it too, or money implications, I should say.
Yeah, I mean everybody does, but at the same, yeah, I don't know. Do you get does a player? Do they? I guess they have to get their game checks, but like, what happens if you just don't play a bunch of games? Do you get your game checks? Like, I don't know how that works.
If enough people agree, man, it's really messy, dude.
Yeah.
My gut is that the NBA just pushes forward and we have a horrible product this season, but they get through it. But I really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, regardless of games getting postponed and teams playing with smaller rosters, the product already has not been very good this year.
I was going to say that it's the blowout thing is.
I mean, it continued tonight,
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we don't even have to really recap some of these games tonight. Like, the only close game today was the
Clippers Bulls.
Was the Clippers Bulls, which was a great game. I watched that game. It was a great back and forth battle. I'm not going to dive into it too much, but I talked about it. Zach LaVine and Kawhi basically just went at each other. But then OKC beat the brakes off of Brooklyn, which was a pretty interesting game. Denver beat the brakes off of New York. The Lakers currently are beating the Rockets by 15 in the third quarter. Utah beat Detroit, who is probably the worst team in the NBA at the moment. It's just not good. I mean, Spurs and the T-Wolves are playing right now. Does anyone care about that game? Warriors. I have Warriors, Raptors on right here. The Raptors are awful. The best game of the night is the game that got canceled. The Heat Celtics. That's a bad look for the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Corey, I don't know if this is Corey James. I don't know if this is your first time watching or listening to the show, but we generally every night we do picks for the next day. we haven't been able to do it as consistently as we'd like to because, like you're saying, the game lines are always off and we're not going to do picks tonight because there are no lines because Vegas has no idea what to do.
How could they?
Yeah, it's impossible.
Playing.
They don't know who's playing in the
who's
games.
Gonna be out there.
But it's a good point, and that's why we probably won't do picks tonight. So, yeah, but I have a feeling you're probably right. You know, I don't think they will shut down, but I mean, if this happens every night, if there's a game a night where a team has 8 guys or a game has to get postponed, like how can you keep going?
Yeah,
It's just not fair. It's just not right to fan bases. It's not right to the players.
there is one other scenario that gets this thing shut down real quickly, by the way, and that's if someone dies
Gets
from
really
COVID.
sick.
Yeah, or gets really sick. Yeah, which is kind of insane. That I can't think of an athlete that Von Miller apparently was in bad shape, right? But
Yeah, I haven't heard of any of these athletes that have gotten it being really sick. No.
Yeah. So,
But I will say this, I'll bring up the Sixers again. You start the season 7-1. They look better than I can remember them ever looking. Probably, I mean, at least since the year they got knocked out by the Raptors, right? Mm-hmm. But they look great. And now everything's thrown off. And when you look at the top of I don't know if home court advantage is going to matter a ton in the playoffs this year because of the nature of this season. But the top of the East, those top 5 seeds in the East are going to be pretty important, or going to be pretty close, right? A game or two could separate any of it. And now the Sixers might go on a run here where they lose a bunch of games, and it could come back to bite them later in the year because they're only playing with 8 guys.
yeah.
Like Joel Embiid, you said after the show last week, Embiid basically said, I have a young son. I'm going to quarantine until I feel safe.
And he's barking on Twitter tonight a little bit cryptically.
I saw. He retweeted the tweet about canceling one team getting a game canceled, but the Sixers not getting their game canceled.
Right.
I mean, Embiid, yeah, he's had a couple of tweets today that were a little bit cryptic, like you said. So it's not going to have a huge impact in terms of teams making and missing the playoffs, I don't think. But it could have an implication on seeding down the line, which is important. Even
For sure, yeah.
I mean, even without fans, and hopefully you would hope that by the playoffs there will be at least some fans.
At this rate, it seems
not.
like we're going in the wrong direction. Yeah,
We are absolutely going in the wrong direction.
yeah.
But you never know. Plus, right. I mean, even some of if you talk to these guys, I'm sure the Sixers would rather play on their home court throughout the playoffs.
Sleep in their own beds. Yeah,
right. Instead of having to go down to Miami or go to Boston, So these COVID games they will at least have some impact could have some type of impact in terms of seeding. Like Boston's won 3 in a row. They just started to really get things together, and they weren't even totally healthy. They've won 3 in a row. They're 7-3 right now. Now the majority of their team is quarantining. So who knows? Either way, Jason, even if they get enough players to play in their next game, Jason Tatum's still out 10 to 14 days. So they could very easily lose a couple games. That's going to come back to impact them. It's not a great look right now for the league, but I do agree. I don't see it necessarily changing a ton.
Yeah.
All right. Well, should we roll through some of our other non-COVID related overreactions from the league?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. My second overreaction outside of all the COVID stuff for this week was after watching LaMelo Ball become the youngest player in NBA history to record a triple-double. I think watching him play, he may end up being the perfect NBA point guard. And the reason being is because he's 6'8", he can guard multiple positions, he's shooting 36% from 3. His shot's not good looking, but it goes in. He does a little bit of everything. He's already one of the best passers in the league. And he can score, but he's never going to score enough, average enough points, to where you're going to have to max him out. I don't think he's ever going to be a max player. But that's perfect. That's perfect. I mean, it's like Brogdon, the way I talk about Brogdon. Now, the way Brogdon's playing this year, he may end up getting a max deal at the end of this. That guy's playing out of his mind. But I don't think LaMelo is ever going to be a 25 a night guy. I think he'll always be in the high teens when he's in it. Like when he gets to his prime, he'll be in the high teens and averaging a bunch of assists and rebounds. But I don't think that's going to get him a max deal. But that's perfect. Like you don't want to build what?
They had already got one guy a max deal.
Who?
Ben Simmons.
Yeah, well, that's different. He was the first overall pick.
Yeah, that is the big difference.
I think there was there's a lot more expectation around Ben Simmons, and they're also different players. Like Simmons
much different players. Yeah.
Ben Simmons' game is predicated on his absurd athleticism and just the things he does for a guy his size. I think LaMelo is more of a natural. He's a point. Like no one's looking at him as like a 6'8" freak who should be a point guard. And it's like this guy's a point guard. But again, I mean, maybe it does. Maybe eventually they say, "Oh, we have to." But I just don't see him ever being. I see him being a high level, maybe even an all-star level, which I guess at this point in the NBA, being an all-star can get you a max because there's so few guys. But at his size and his skill set, he's the guy I would want as my point guard because I wouldn't feel obligated to pay a guy averaging 16, 17 a game max money. But again, I guess Rudy Gobert also got it. So like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this, right?
I like agree with your premise that yeah, if you can pay a guy like that under the max, that would be great. I just think that there's enough teams that suck enough that like aren't paying anybody. I think if he's putting up the numbers you're talking about, I actually do think someone, whether it's the Hornets or somebody else, will offer that kind of money, maybe, but I don't know. And in terms of how good he is, you've watched so much more of him than I have. The only time I really saw him was against the Sixers, and I think I can write those games off because the Hornets were horrible in both of those games. So for me, the jury's out on LaMelo Ball. I told you I was really low on him, and I'm not going to be high on him until I watch him play better, But obviously,
well, you've obviously not watched him play because he's played really well this year.
I'm saying the two games I watched him were the Sixers games, and he was just meh to me. So I got to see more. But
yeah, you need to. He's very good. I watched them play against the Hawks, and now, granted, there probably should be an overreaction in here about the Hawks because they look horrible. And by the way, we might as well mention it because we don't have it really as part of the show. Bogdanovic has it came out today. He had fractured his knee last game, like an avulsion fracture though. So I think it's like a chip. It's not like a full like break.
Okay.
It's a different type of fracture. I think it's like 8 to 12 weeks, which is still a long time, but it's not like torn ACL something. Yeah. It's not a season thing. Well, I guess this year it might be a season thing, the way that the league's going. But that team's a mess. But I will say, when I was watching LaMelo play against Trae Young, I was like, I know people will think I'm crazy and everyone's going to shit on me today. We'll see what they think 3 years down the line. I think I would take LaMelo Ball over Trae Young right now.
In terms of building
right now to win
a game, really?
No, not to win a game, to be part of a winning team.
Down the line.
By the way,
this season,
the Hornets have a better record than the Hawks right now. The Hawks are a mess.
I know.
And they're built around Trae Young.
Sorry, when you're saying right now, you're saying like this season or down the road? Because
right now.
That's kind of that is pretty wild to me. That's wild.
Trae Young is such an absurd defensive liability. It doesn't get talked about enough. Like watching that, there was a play where LaMelo got like an offensive rebound and got it at about 18 feet and just took Trae Young into the post, and LaMelo Ball looked like Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah, you texted me that. Yeah,
it was awful. And just Trae Young, the way people used to shit on Harden early in his career over how bad he was defensively, they might as well just start making the videos about Trae Young. He is a negative defensive player. Like, and there's you can't even say like the Steph Trae Young comparisons in this regard because Steph tries. Steph plays with effort on defense. He's not Trae Young's a minus defensive player, and it looks like, I don't know, the team just doesn't look like, I mean, I know the reports came out that him and John Collins got after it and this and that. It looks like the team does not like him. They look like they don't like each other, like those guys on that team. And you texted me like I could see Trae Young being, I don't remember what
Either
you
said a
said.
prick or a dick. I'm not sure, but yeah,
Well, whatever it
I've
was, I've interviewed him. I interviewed him at All Star or at the draft the year he was. He struck me as a very arrogant person. I don't know if that was just like he was having a bad day, he was sick of doing media, whatever. He struck me as kind of arrogant, and LaMelo probably is a little bit too. But it's just like I know it's absurd, and you're laughing at it right now, but we'll see what comes to pass. LaMelo Ball just became the youngest player in NBA history to get a triple-double. He's already shown that he can do more things on the basketball court than Trae Young can do. Trae Young can score. He can score, and he's a very good passer. But, again, go back in history. How many guys averaging 10 assists a game win NBA championships? His usage rate is such, and the way they run their offense through him, he's going to average a ton of assists because he's the ball in his hands every minute of the game. I don't know.
Just to be clear, what I'm having an issue, I don't know if I actually laughed, but what I said was wild was the I guess the this season or right now thing. In 2 to 3 years, I wouldn't be shocked if LaMelo Ball is head and shoulders just the better player than Trae Young, but I just think he has a long way to go. And right now, Trae Young is an unbelievable weapon offensively. That now,
I'm just like, I guess my thing with Trae Young is, yes, he's playing really well, and yes, he averaged close to 30, and he was close to leading the league in assists. But his teams have been bad.
Yeah, they have. I'm not defending Trae Young.
And I'm telling you right now, that team is very bad right now.
Yeah, they're not good.
Like they're already an awful defensive team, the Hawks, and they can't score. They're supposed to be like a dynamic scoring team. Now, Gallinari has basically only played one game this year. Rondo's hurt, and now Bogdanovic is out. So they're basically back to what they were last year. But they were better. But they were a good offensive team last year. They were like middle of the road. Right now, they're like in the 20s in offensive efficiency. I'm just saying, watching LaMelo, the way he fits with a subpar team, like, he'll be the starter. If Devontae Graham keeps playing the way he's playing, he's going to be the starter there. He's going to start for them. And I would peg him right now to be Rookie of the Year. The more minutes he gets. He just looks good. I'm shocked at how comfortable he looks out there.
I can't wait for my next Charlotte game to watch because I am.
Well, now he's going to play like shit. I mean, I just jinxed him. But the way he's been playing, he looks very good.
All right, should I go for my overreaction? Should I go positive or negative? Because I'll go negative. You just went positive with LaMelo Ball. Might be the perfect.
Do you have a positive?
I do. My last one is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'll go negative.
Oh, you're gonna go negative. Okay.
Russell Westbrook's career is toast.
I put it up on the screen.
And the number that is blowing my mind. Oh, a couple numbers. The number one number is the 5 3-point attempts per game. Okay.
Is that new? Was he
terrible? No, he has been so bad at 3-point shooting for so long now. Why on earth is he shooting 5 a game, bro? Like, and I'm the first to say it about Ben Simmons is he has to extend his game. He has to at least attempt them, right? But not 5 a game. 2, 1, like that'd be great. But
the Embiid, the way Embiid is.
Right, well, yes, exactly.
Embiid is taking the least amount of threes of his career, and he's having an MVP type year.
This guy hasn't shot over 30% from 3 since the 2016-17 season, okay? That's a long time at this point. No reason on earth this guy should be shooting 5 a game, and I really truly think the Wizards are suffering as a result. Now, an even more confusing stat, okay? First 9 years of the guy's career, he shoots 82.3 from the free throw line. The last 4 years, he's down to 71.6, okay? I doubt you can find a player in the league with that type of regression from the free throw line. It's insane. So does he not care? Like, what is going on to knock your free throws down 11 percentage points? I don't. Does he not?
He's gotten worse. I feel like he gets worse. I feel like
like
he's gotten worse as a shooter every year.
This might be harsh, but like my hunch is that he's completely stat hunting, and all he cares about is getting his 10 boards and his 10 assists and his triple double on the record, and that's it. Like, what's going on with this guy, man?
I don't know. But I will say, like, when I saw you write this, like, besides from the stats, the reason his career might be toast is because this team sucks.
Right, but they shouldn't be this bad.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But at my point, I'm saying, like, if he was having a down year, but they were at least competitive, and it was like, oh, Russ went there, the team got a little bit better. He's struggling, but he's making the team better. Then you'd be like, okay, maybe there's more there. But he's been awful, and the team is awful. And it doesn't help that Thomas Bryant is now out for the year.
Yeah, that's really bad.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, from your to add on to it is, like, if he has this bad of a year and they don't somehow turn it around, which I don't see a scenario right now how they do.
No, I don't either.
They've just gotten substantially worse with that Thomas Bryant. But, by the way, Thomas Bryant tore his ACL, so he's out for the year. He was having a career year for them, and he's their only, like, legit big man on the team. So that's awful for them. But, yeah, man. I mean, if this team, they have the worst record in the NBA right now.
Mm-hmm.
If they finish in the bottom, if they finish like in the bottom 5 of the league, yeah. I mean, his career is not necessarily toast because I think he still has years on his deal. But I understand what you're saying. Like, it might be done for him after this contract.
There was a tiny, tiny piece of me in my mind that thought Russell Westbrook could win a title somehow, some way, and now that's gone. No chance. He just can't.
Yeah, it's tough. It sucks. I mean, I didn't think he could win. You mean you thought he could win a title as the best player on a team?
No, not necessarily. Maybe he squeaked his way. Like, I don't know. Maybe he got himself onto a team. Yeah.
He could, at the end of this deal, just go play for a loaded team.
I guess, but I don't know if he'd even be
do
willing
like
to do that. And
the Jason Kidd, Gary Payton route, where
right, but
at the end of their career, they just go win a title.
Doesn't seem like he's willing to embrace any sort of role other than I'm going to take a shitload of threes and go for my triple doubles every night, because there's just no defending 5 3-point attempts per game when you can't make any. Like, I mean, you're way below average. You're not helping your team. What don't you see about that after 4 years? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, I feel like his career has kind of been toast for a little bit. For a little while. I mean, he's just been regressing, you know.
Definitely, yeah. I just thought that
once he got traded out of OKC, the writing was kind of on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And also seeing, like, the Rockets got worse with him, and they changed the way they play for him, and they got like, that situation became sort of a mess, and now the Wizards are in
I guess
big
the
trouble.
biggest difference is that he's going to miss the playoffs. He's never missed the playoffs, you know, and this is like he's always been able to win.
Year.
He did with OKC.
It was the year Kevin Durant got hurt.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
But that was the year. So if you remember back, Russell Westbrook really exploded as the current Russell Westbrook that we know, the triple-double machine, the year that Kevin Durant got hurt. And he went on this triple-double. He didn't average a triple-double that year, but he went on a tear of like triple-double, like 40-point triple-doubles. And everyone was like, man, this guy might be the best point guard in the NBA. But they didn't make the playoffs. And then I think it was the next year, Russell Westbrook got hurt towards the end of the season, and the Thunder made the playoffs without Russell Westbrook. And that's when I was telling people, I'm like, why are we not talking about this, right? This guy, you know, and obviously when KD left, they still made the playoffs, but he willed them to the playoffs, and that was peak Russell Westbrook. But yeah, I mean, I think ever since that year, where he averaged a 30-point triple-double and they were a 6 seed, and then they got knocked out in the first round, it's all been regression.
Yeah, to me, it just does not seem like he's willing to sacrifice stats for the better of the team. That's no good.
Well, my next overreaction is, I guess, this is my last overreaction, which I guess is related here. I think Brad Beale will be traded before James Harden. And I know that the Wizards have been pretty, staunch that they're not going to trade Brad Beale. But if they keep losing games at this pace and he keeps playing the way he's playing, I don't see a scenario where it doesn't get super contentious. Like, scoring 60 and losing, having the worst record in the NBA, losing arguably your second best player, because if we're being honest, Thomas Bryant was probably their second best player at the moment, the way he was playing.
If you want to win games, then yeah, if you're looking at it, yeah, from that way.
Like I get I've talked about, like, loyalty is overrated, right? And Yeah, the Harden thing is a little different. Harden's a little older, and Harden's had great years, right? Like Harden's been to an NBA Finals. Harden has almost led this Rockets team to the finals. Brad Beal has not done anything, and he's just toiling away, and his prime is being wasted in Washington. And you got to think that if they get to like game 25 and they're still bottom 2 or 3 team in the league, he's gonna demand a trade. Like he's going to demand out. And I think most of these teams that want James Harden would rather have Brad Beal at this point.
That's a good point. Yeah, after what has unfolded with James Harden and
just age, like this, they bring the same thing to the table at this point in their careers. Brad Beal's averaging 30 a game. The guy just had 60 the other night in 3 quarters. Basically, he had 57 at the end of the third. So he basically brings the same thing to the table as Harden at this point in their careers, and he's younger and also doesn't have any of the baggage. Right? He's been a pretty good soldier to the Wizards organization. You know, I don't want to be traded or whatever, but it's going to get to a point where he's got to be like, I mean, I can't be here. Mm-hmm. We're just awful.
I agree. I don't even think it's an overreaction. I think, I
don't know. I mean,
it's more of a prediction than anything. But
yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I hope so, because that dude is an animal, and it just sucks not seeing him in the playoffs year after year. And they're not making the playoffs this year. I really don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just more of like we've already seen Harden succeed. And I understand he hasn't won a title, but and he wants to go somewhere where he has a chance to win a title. I just want Brad Beal to go somewhere where he can play in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
We have seen James Harden play well and he's been in the playoffs like every year of his career pretty much, and been at the highest level almost. I don't even know how many times has Brad Beal been in the playoffs?
With John Wall at one point, like probably John Wall's last healthy year. Which was, who knows?
And even those teams,
they didn't have a shot at doing anything.
Yeah. So, but this guy, if you put this guy on any of all these teams that are potentially looking at James Harden, if you put Brad Beal on any of those teams, he immediately makes them arguably the best team in the East. Now,
I think so.
Would the Wizards trade him to an Eastern Conference team? That also, I'm not really sure. But I guess when you have a disgruntled player, like, for example, New Orleans with AD, you just got to get the best package you can get, because they had to they trade him to the Lakers within the conference is the best thing they could get.
Yeah.
They actually might get more for Brad Beal at this point than John Wall, or than what the Rockets could get for Harden.
It's possible because of age. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I'm going to skip
your next one.
I don't feel like talking about Kyrie Irving, so I'm going to skip that one. The guys, I just basically, in summary, it's a gigantic.
But that's your last. That's your last one, right?
No, I have the Suns.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna go
I think Kyrie's more interesting.
Okay, all right. Well, we can hammer Kyrie some more if you want.
I mean,
I just think.
Go ahead.
I think this Kyrie thing, which is I think flying a little bit under the radar because of all the COVID news.
A little bit, yeah.
But this guy is refusing to play. He's under contract. He's refusing to play and won't tell anybody why. Okay, so. That is a huge problem.
Other than sources who say he's not playing because of the riot.
He won't come out and tell people. He
has not addressed the media,
And this is just the latest fiasco in how many now? You know, how many of these Kyrie stories pop up? It's 1 a year, 2 a year. So if this doesn't undo that team, his next one will, or the one after that. I just feel bad for Kevin Durant, man. And there's no way Kevin Durant knew this guy well enough to know what he was getting himself into ahead of time when...
I don't know that that's true. I thought the whole thing was that they wanted to play together, and that's why he went to Brooklyn.
Maybe, but I'm saying maybe he didn't know him well enough as a person to be like, this guy's legitimately off his rocker. I don't know. If Kevin Durant can win a title with this guy, I mean, that would be in a tier of its own. The only guy to do it is LeBron, obviously. Like, this is a mess, and it sucks for Durant's career because, I mean, with how top-heavy the NBA is, Kevin Durant can't win a title by himself. And if he does, it'd be absolutely insane. But he needs somebody as talented as Kyrie Irving to do it. And I don't think this guy's going to be around. I just don't. He's a crazy person.
Yeah, something's up with it. Like, yeah, I bang on Kyrie all the time. I know he's got some. There's there's I'm a little concerned about him, actually.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
I don't know if I should be, but he's missed 3 games over this, and I'm not, again, just like we talked about on Friday. Um, they. I'm not gonna knock him if he really feels that strongly, but is this a protest? Is he protesting? Is he protesting, or is he just like he doesn't feel like playing? Because like
I don't
I
even
guess
think.
it's so hard to know, but like yeah, he's just like Steve Nash said today. He doesn't know, and there's no timeline.
So I think a requirement of a protest is that the people you're demonstrating to know what's up. Like nobody knows what this is, so what could it possibly achieve? Like protests are meant to achieve things, like create change. We don't know anything about this. Like say something, then it could be a protest. Then maybe people are on board with it. But we're all in the dark because Kyrie's doing his thing. He's making his art or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. It is like to sit out that first game. I was just like, okay. I didn't
Yeah,
like
same.
it. I didn't like the way he handled it. I didn't
Same.
like not telling Steve Nash. I didn't like any of that. I didn't like the fact that every other player had to play and he just chose not to play, because it would have been like if every player on the team was just like, we're not playing, it would have been, there would have been huge ramifications league wide if the entire Nets team was just like, we're not playing.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, they all just played and he just chose not to play. I didn't like that. Again, we talked about like if he needed like a mental health break or whatever people were saying about him. Not going to knock him for that either.
If he right, you're
But
saying if
as
he
of
just
right,
comes out and says it,
right.
if
But
he
as
sa-
of
yeah.
right now, he's just not playing and not telling anybody why he's not playing, and that is sort of that's. It's first of all, it's an issue of professionalism, but also we don't know what the problem is. So it does concern me a little bit. Like, is there something really going on with Kyrie? I don't know. I hope not. I hope he's okay. Like, I hope he's okay. I'm getting to a point now. He's just chosen a professional athlete who's getting paid millions and millions of dollars to play basketball, has just chosen not to play 3 straight games. I'm concerned for the guy, which is strange because I've sort of totally like sort of changed my tone on it. I get it, but it's strange. And Kyrie has done a lot of Kyrie stuff in his career, right? Like, we're not overly surprised that this is that it's Kyrie doing this, because Kyrie seems to be the one guy who would do this. But just sitting 3 games, just choosing not to play 3 games because of if it's true that it's because of the riots in DC and the Jacob Blake, none of the policemen getting charged in Wisconsin. Like, if it is because of that, I mean, I understand, but also it is concerning that it's affecting him, his mind that much, that every other player is playing and he's not. Like, I'm just like wondering what's happening.
I just truly think if it were something that I was going to be willing to be sympathetic towards, that Steve Nash would also be like, there'd be a lot of words of support from Steve Nash in terms of, yeah, we're thinking about Kyrie, Steve Nash really can't comment on it because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. But like, if this were something serious and Kyrie was in a really dark place or something, I know Steve Nash would be like, yeah, I can't talk about it, but we're with Kyrie, we're rooting for stuff like that,
That's a good point.
Steve Nash won't go there. He won't go there. So,
yeah. And him saying there's no timeline, we don't know when he's in. Like, it's crazy. The whole thing is just crazy.
It's really wild.
It is flying, and you're right. It's very much flying under the radar because of games getting canceled and the whole COVID thing. But, I just don't. How long? But it also does strike me as there's more to the story, because even if, let's just say he is sitting these games because of the protests, right? Or not the protests. Not calling it a protest, because of the riots, right? At what point can the team be like, all right, you got to come play? So that's where it's like, it seems like maybe they do know, and maybe there really is something going on with him, because at some point, the guy's missed 3 games, or is going to miss 3 games, or has already. I don't know if he's missed them or he's going to miss 3 games. But at some point, do they fine him? Do they hold game checks? Do they force him to come back and play? Like, under normal circumstances, if a player was just like, I'm not playing, the team would say, no, you're playing, or we're going to fine you every game you don't show up. Mm-hmm. But right now it seems like there's like this mutual understanding between the team and Kyrie. Kyrie's not coming. So they must know more. They must know more, or else if they literally didn't know why Kyrie was not playing, they would be fining him. They would have to fine him at some point. Like, okay, the first game, it was the day after the riot. Tensions are like, things are going on. Kyrie has always been very active in social causes and stuff like that. He's taken a day. It's been 3 games now. So at some point, if they don't know what's going on in his mind or what's happening with him, they would have to start fining him or suspend him or something.
I agree. Yeah.
So they must know something. Which is why, in my mind, I'm like, maybe there is something real going on with him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, nobody knows.
Don't know. Yeah.
He's the only one who
I'm
knows.
in the dark. I probably shouldn't be as negative towards the situation as I am, but it's just.
Well, you're consistent though. Like you've said from the beginning.
Yeah.
This is sort of going in line with what you've said from the beginning, which is, and we didn't think it would be this because of this event, or this would be the catalyst. Yeah. But you've said from the beginning, Kyrie won't be on this team all year. Something will happen.
I did say that. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe we're headed that way. But let's see if by the time Kyrie decides he wants to play basketball again, will there even be an NBA season?
Great point.
So maybe Kyrie just doesn't want to get COVID. Maybe he sees that the league, that COVID's running wild on the NBA, and he's just like, hey, I'm going to sit this one out, fellas.
He should opt out. I mean,
isn't he like one of the vice? Like that's one of the crazy things too. He's like one of the vice presidents of the Players Association, and he's just choosing not to play basketball. It's just so
bizarre.
Wild to me.
It is bizarre.
Such a bizarre situation. All right, well, let's do your last. By the way, Kevin Beatty, if you're still watching, I don't know what this comment means.
I think it's sarcastic in saying like
he said, "Well, guys, we legitimately can't make that argument for Kyrie after the way he publicly traded LeBron." Do you know what that means?
I think he's being sarcastic, saying like it's so like he's agreeing with us. Kelvin Beatty is, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I guess so.
Not sure. Kelvin Beatty, clear it up if you're still listening.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, your last overreaction is that the Suns are the second best team in the West.
Yeah, and obviously the bigger overreaction there is, are they better than the Clippers? On paper, no, they're not better, but...
Well, I watched the Clippers again today. The Clippers are not... I think we talked about this I mentioned it last week. Like, we keep calling the Clippers the second best team because of Paul George and Kawhi. But they're not very good right now.
So maybe it's not that much of an overreaction, but I guess the fact that they're only 10 games in and we're arriving at that. I mean, they're tied for the best record in the West. And to me, it's, okay, we know the star power in Devin Booker and Chris Paul, but this depth is awesome. They're incredible. Mikal Bridges is way better than we thought.
Is it Mikal? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Mikal Bridges. And then Cameron Johnson.
I think I've been saying it wrong.
What have you been saying? Michael? Or
Mikal?
Mikal? I think it's Mikal Bridges. I don't know. We'll have to clear it up. But the depth. I mean, dude, we're not even nobody's even talking about former first overall pick DeAndre Ayton, who's 22 and is probably has a lot of room to grow. Like, we're not even talking about him because we've got guys like Dario Saric is like their 8th guy. Like, he's a legitimate threat. He could be a 6th man on most teams, you know? I'm so glad that we're going to get to see Devin Booker in the playoffs. I've never been a Chris Paul fan, so this is kind of out of nowhere. You know, it's like it's not like me to be like all aboard a Chris Paul team, but I'm all aboard here because they got the pieces, and I just want to see what I don't think they're even close to the Lakers, but I want to see them give the Lakers a shot. You know, see what Devin Booker can do in a 7-game series against an elite team.
Yeah. So, I think like. If you were a casual fan and watched this or listened to this, and you said the Suns are the second best team in the West, it would definitely be considered an overreaction. But if you watch the games this year, there's almost no question at this point. The Suns are just playing. I mean, they're the better team right now. They're defending. They have like 6 guys scoring in double figures. Chris Paul's playing great. A lot of guys are already having career years for them. And if you look at the Clippers, they lost by 51, right? They blew a 31-point lead to the Suns. They beat the Suns, but they were up 31 and only ended up winning by like 4. So they blew that. 2 nights ago, they blew a 21-point second-half lead to the Warriors. Lost to the Warriors. And then today, they barely beat the Bulls. They are, I want to say they're 27th or 26th in the NBA in defensive efficiency right now. The Clippers are not playing good basketball. And I think worse than anything, their body language on the floor, especially when things start getting tough, it's horrendous. Like, those guys look like they absolutely don't want to be there. And I blame a lot of that on Kawhi Leonard. Again, I'm going to go back to Kawhi Leonard. I don't think he's a leader. And I don't think that team has a leader. And I do think that that's going to be something important. Because when you, again, I harp on it all the time. You look at Kawhi's great teams. It was the Spurs, and then it was the Raptors that had a bunch of NBA. It had Kyle Lowry, who was the guy. Kyle Lowry's
a great leader.
But then you also had Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. And now I know this team has Serge Ibaka, but it's different now. This team, they just don't look like they're together. It looks like a team built around two guys who are playing individual basketball, and they're going to try to, they're going to live or die based on whether these 2 guys can just fully put this team on their back and win a lot of games. And they will win a lot of regular season games. But, if they lost today to the Bulls, my overreaction was going to be Ty Lue's on the hot seat already.
Yeah.
Because they just don't look good. They just don't look good.
Yeah.
They look they lost Trez, right? But they replaced him with Serge. They didn't get better. Their roster didn't get better, and they are not better than last year. Like, Ty Lue is not doing a better coaching job than Doc Rivers did for this team. So I just don't. I don't know. I say all that to say, I agree with you. I mean, I think my overreaction last week was that the Suns are top 3, and now having watched both teams a couple times this past week, I agree that right now the Suns are the second best team. But it is an overreaction because to anyone who hasn't actually watched games.
Yeah. Well, and it's only been 10 games. That's the other overreaction element is that, but their schedule's been solid. It's not like they're playing a bunch of shitty teams. So that's part of it.
And the Clippers are losing or almost losing to subpar teams. Like, the Mavs are playing well now. They're on a 3-game win streak because Luka's playing out of his mind. But when they lost to the Mavs were not. When they lost by 51 to the Mavs were not playing good basketball. The Warriors are playing better basketball right now, but they're not a team you should blow a 21-point second-half lead to. So, and then the Bulls today. The Bulls are playing good for the Bulls, but you shouldn't. It shouldn't be you shouldn't, first of all, give up 127 points to the Bulls, and then and also only beat them by 3. Like, barely beat them.
Well, also, if you have 2 of the best wing defenders in the league, Zach LaVine should not be getting 45. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, yeah, and every night somebody's going off on them. Like, Steph ended up with 38.
Yeah.
These are supposed to be 2 of the, like you said, arguably the 2 best wing defenders, right?
Yeah, 2 of the best. And
I mean, there were some people that when they signed these 2 guys would have argued that Kawhi was 1 and Paul George was 2 in terms of wing defenders. So it's just like, they are horrible defensively. Horrible. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to try to double check before we wrap up right now, but I think the Bulls had 60 points in the paint in this game, which I think might be a franchise record or something. I saw something on the broadcast when I was watching. But, oh no, it wasn't the Bulls game. It must have been a different game. They had 42 points in the paint. But, yeah, they don't look good, and the Suns do look very good. And the fact that it's only 10 games in is probably a feather in the Suns' cap more so than anything because they're basically a brand new team. And the Clippers have their, other than Trez, they have their core back. And they look like they got worse. And the
fact that we're not even calling Luke Kennard part of their core, like, that signing was brutally bad. Well, it's not working.
and Pat Beverly's bad. Pat Beverly's not a good player. By the way, Lou Williams today had his best game of the year. If he didn't have his best game of the season, they probably lose to the Bulls.
Definitely.
Like, Lou Will might have regressed. I mean, he's getting old. He can't do it forever. Like, if Lou Williams has had any regression, and Pat Beverly is clearly just not a very good player anymore, you're really, I mean, you are totally banking on these two guys carrying you to the promised land.
Were you about to say whole hog? Were you about to go whole hog?
Yeah, whole-hoggedly. Zach LaVine really went off, though. He had 45 tonight. 45. Zach LaVine had 45. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are the two best wing defenders in the NBA, and Zach LaVine had 45. You know who looks like a stud as we wrap up here?
Let me guess. Are you going to say Patrick Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy rules. I saw some headline, LeBron compared his hands to Kawhi or something.
Well, because they played the other day, and Patrick Williams was guarding him the whole time, and he's like, so the first thing I noticed about him is he's got Kawhi hands, and he's smart. And he said they got a good one. That team's...
Dude, I don't think the Bulls are too far away, man. Really don't.
They're very interesting. They are fascinating because Zach LaVine could really... I mean, Zach LaVine's the kind of guy who eventually could lead the league in scoring. Right? Like, that's a guy that I would trust to put the ball in his hands to get a bucket at any time in the game. And I talk about that all the time, which is that's the most important skill to have in the NBA. Because there's so few guys that you can say, at any point in the game, I trust you to get a bucket from anywhere on the floor. And he's the kind of guy who actually has that kind of skill set.
Yeah.
So they have that guy. Now you got LeBron talking about how Patrick Williams is could be a Kawhi type of defender. And he's 19 years old. And then Kobe White's just starting to play really good. I mean, yeah. And Markkanen's not even playing, by the way.
I was going to say, we haven't mentioned two other lottery picks in Wendell Carter Jr. and Markkanen.
Well, Markkanen hasn't been playing.
I know. I'm just saying.
Which, by the way, they've started to play pretty good without him.
I did happen to notice that, but I've been so bullish on Larry Markkanen that I'm not ready to acknowledge it. So
trade him and go get a vet.
Yeah.
Go get like a good piece, you know?
Yeah, or maybe two nice role players. I don't know.
Well,
that would be a piece. One, yeah, I know what you mean.
Go get a nice piece.
Nice piece.
I mean, Markkanen, guy's a pretty nice piece.
I wouldn't be able to tell you, but he is a pretty nice piece.
Oh yeah, he's a nice piece.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
He's a nice piece. So you got to if you're going to trade that piece, you got to get another good piece back.
Got to.
All right, I think this episode's over.
Pretty good. Hour and 2 minutes with pretty much all dog shit basketball today.
Oh yeah, that's right. I guess we should update since that's what this show is supposed to be about. The full scoreboard for tonight. Let's go. Denver beat the Knicks 114-89. OKC beat Brooklyn 129-116. The Clippers, we already talked about that game a bunch. Utah beat Detroit 96-86. There's 3 games still going on right now. The Lakers are up. Well, the Lakers are blowing out the Rockets, and that game is basically over. There's 2 minutes left. The Spurs and the T-Wolves, a game that literally no one on the planet cares about, is in the third quarter, and it's close. And the Warriors are up 10 on the Raptors at halftime. Warriors are playing good basketball. You have. This is one I will give you all the credit for. You have 100% nailed the impact Draymond would have on this team when he came back, because they are like a competent basketball team at this point.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, Steph's playing better. Kelly Oubre's still awful. There was a stat. Did you see? Okay, I'll wrap with this. Did you see that Reddit stat the other day about involving Kelly Oubre in 3-point shooting?
No.
Hold on. Someone texted it to me, but I also saw it on Twitter. Let me just find it. Go back and find it. It was something like the Warriors right now, and this was before tonight's game, obviously, but it was something like the Warriors are 17th. Here it is. Golden State is currently 19th in the league in 3-point percentage. If Kelly Oubre had not shot any threes, they'd be 4th.
Oh, my God. That is a hell of a stat. That's wild. How many has he taken? Probably a bunch. Probably at least
at the time, this was, it doesn't have a date on it, but this was, at the time, he was 6 for 45 on the year.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So you're telling me if Kelly Oubre had just gotten hurt and missed the first 10 games of the year, they'd be...
Or if they just played other guys.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because those other guys, even though no one knows who they are, they've been shooting the ball really well. So, obviously. So...
God, Kelly Oubre's got to turn it around after how hard
you know
I
what?
went at Sam
How about
Presti.
this? Markkanen and Oubre, those are two pieces.
Those are two good
Those
looking
are
pieces.
Those are two pretty good looking pieces. Maybe trade them for each other.
Yeah.
Maybe swap.
That's a good way to wrap that.
Maybe swap those pieces. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Later.